In the heart of a small town called Ironvale, there lived a man they called Washington. Not for the city, and not for the president, but for the quiet, immense way he carried the weight of a nation's dreams on his shoulders. Washington was an engineer, a man whose hands spoke a language far more profound than words. He didn't need grand speeches or the roar of applause. His blueprints were a form of poetry, his complex calculations a kind of silent, intricate music that only he could hear. Ironvale was a town divided, split in two by a wild, untamable river. The shores were separated not just by water, but by a chasm of lost opportunity and isolation. For years, they dreamt of a bridge, a link to unite them, to bring commerce and community together. When the time finally came to turn this dream into reality, there was only one person they could trust with such a monumental task. They turned to Washington. Not because he promised them miracles, but because his entire career was a testament to making them happen, quietly and without fanfare. The challenge was immense. The river was a force of nature, its currents powerful and unpredictable. The terrain on either side was unforgiving, a mix of steep cliffs and unstable ground. And then there was the budget. It was so small, so laughably inadequate that most other engineers would have walked away without a second thought. But Washington saw past the obstacles. He saw the structure already standing, a beautiful arc of steel and stone in his mind's eye. He rolled up his sleeves, his mind already weaving the intricate web of physics and design needed to conquer the impossible. Work began with a hopeful energy. The sounds of construction filled the air, a symphony of hammers, saws, and the shouts of hard-working men. Washington was in his element, a conductor leading this orchestra of creation. He moved with a focused grace, his presence a source of calm confidence for the entire crew. But in the world of construction, danger is a constant, lurking shadow. And one fateful afternoon, tragedy struck. Without warning, a section of scaffolding collapsed. The sickening crunch of metal and splintering wood was followed by a moment of horrifying silence. When the dust settled, they found Washington, broken beneath the wreckage. The fall had been devastating. It shattered bones and stole the air from his lungs. The doctors managed to piece his body back together, his spine slowly healing, but something essential was lost forever. The accident had stolen his voice. Washington, the man whose quiet commands and clear instructions had guided them, was now trapped in a world of complete and total silence. The town of Ironvale held its breath. The project stalled. The half-finished piers on either side of the river now looked like tombstones, monuments to a dream that had died. Many believed the bridge was cursed, that Washington's silence was a sign to abandon the project. Despair settled over the town like a heavy fog, but they had underestimated the man they called Washington. Where others saw only silence, he found a new kind of clarity. The loss of his voice had not extinguished the fire in his spirit. It had focused it, refined it into a pure, unwavering beam of determination. One morning, to the astonishment of the entire town, Washington returned to the construction site. He was changed. His body was scarred, his movements more deliberate, but his eyes burned with the same familiar intensity. Strapped to his chest was a simple chalkboard and a piece of chalk. He didn't need to speak. He began to write. He scribbled instructions, drew complex diagrams with a steady hand, and communicated with nods, points, and the sheer force of his presence. At first, the workers were hesitant, unsure how to follow a leader who could not utter a single word, but they quickly learned. His silence became a sacred space. In the quiet, they found a new level of focus. Every command written on that chalkboard was precise, every drawing a masterpiece of engineering communication. The workers followed him like disciples, their faith in him stronger than ever before. They saw his resilience, his refusal to be defined by his limitations, and it inspired them to push beyond their own. His silence wasn't an absence. It was a presence, a powerful, unspoken force that bound them together. Every single beam they placed, every cable they meticulously stretched across the growing expanse, bore the undeniable mark of his unwavering spirit. Months turned into a year. The bridge slowly, miraculously rose from the riverbanks. It grew not just as a structure of steel and concrete, but as a living monument to defiance and human will. It was an arc of hope, connecting the two shores, just as Washington had envisioned. The day it was finally completed was a day of town-wide celebration. The people of Ironvale gathered, their faces filled with awe and gratitude, looking at the magnificent structure that now defined their town. At the grand opening ceremony, the mayor stood at a podium, his voice filled with emotion as he thanked everyone involved. Finally, he turned and gestured toward the quiet engineer standing at his side. "And now," the mayor announced, "we'd like to ask Mr. Washington to say a few words." A hush fell over the crowd. All eyes turned to the silent architect. Washington stepped forward, a piece of chalk in his hand. He slowly lifted the chalkboard that had become his voice. With deliberate, clear strokes, he wrote a simple sentence for all to see. It read, "A voice is not needed when the vision is clear." The crowd stood in stunned silence for a long moment, the power of his words washing over them. Then the silence was broken. An eruption of applause, cheers, and tears swept through the valley, a sound louder and more heartfelt than any he had ever heard before. Washington never spoke again. He didn't need to. From that day on, his bridge did all the talking for him. It stood as an elegant, powerful statement, an arc of steel and soul, stretching not just across a river, but across doubt, across tragedy, and across every single reason it shouldn't have been possible. And for generations to come, every time someone crossed that bridge, they would look at its graceful lines and feel its sturdy strength beneath their feet. And they would whisper his name, not just as the man who built a bridge, but as the man who built belief. He taught them that the strongest structures aren't always made of metal, but are forged in the moments when giving up seems like the only option, and you choose to build anyway. Thank you so much for watching. If this story moved you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of the human spirit. We'll see you in the next one.